At my husband's birthday party I went to sit beside him, but he leaned in and whispered, "Not here. Sit with the guests." I stopped cold. Then he looked at his wealthy ex and said, "You should take this seat instead." She smirked and sat down like it was arranged. His family laughed. Mine said nothing. I rose, fixed my dress and said, "Carry on." What I did next brought the entire event to a halt. I could hear them whispering before I even turned around. Did he just? Oh my God, did you see? That's his wife, isn't it? The one who planned all this. I was still standing at the head table, my hand hovering uselessly above the chair I'd been told not to sit in. The chair with my name on it. The chair beside my husband Graham, who had just looked me in the eye and said, "Not here. Sit with the guests." Behind me someone gasped. To my left I heard a woman's sharp intake of breath. At a table near the jazz quartet, a man leaned toward his companion and said something too quiet for me to hear, but I saw his eyes dart between me and the woman now sitting in my seat. Vanessa Morrison. Graham's college ex-girlfriend. 6 feet tall in a champagne dress that probably cost more than my mortgage payment. She hadn't hesitated when Graham invited her to take my place. "You've earned it," he told her, like my seat was some kind of prize she'd won. And now she sat there perfectly comfortable while I stood frozen like an idiot in front of 200 people. The whispers were getting louder. More urgent. Is that his ex-girlfriend? At his wife's table? This is so uncomfortable. At the family table, Graham's sister Bethany wasn't even trying to hide her smile. His mother Diane had her hand over her mouth, but her eyes were bright with something that looked like victory. His father Kenneth raised his scotch glass toward Vanessa like he was welcoming her home. They'd known. They'd all known this was going to happen. Everyone except me. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up. Let me tell you about the woman who spent 4 months planning this party, who saved $18,000 to make it perfect, who believed her marriage was solid enough to withstand anything. Let me tell you about the life I thought I was living. I met Graham Holloway 7 years ago at a corporate networking event downtown. I was 31, presenting on digital fraud prevention to a room full of tech executives who looked bored out of their minds. Graham sat in the 3rd row, and unlike everyone else scrolling through their phones, he actually took notes. After my presentation, he found me at the reception. "That was fascinating," he said, handing me a champagne flute I hadn't asked for. "The way you trace money through shell corporations, it's like detective work." "It is detective work," I said, but I smiled when I said it. He was handsome in an accessible way. Sandy brown hair, blue eyes, a well-fitted suit that wasn't flashy. He worked in tech sales, traveled for client meetings, and had the kind of easy confidence that came from years of convincing strangers to trust him. We dated for 2 years. He took me to nice restaurants. Not absurdly expensive ones, just nice. He remembered my birthday, bought thoughtful gifts, introduced me to his family with what seemed like genuine pride. His mother Diane told me I was exactly what Graham needed, someone stable and sensible. His father Kenneth approved of my career, my education, my practical approach to life. We got married at his parents' lakeside estate. Small ceremony, 75 guests, my grandmother's pearls for something old. Graham cried during his vows. I believed every word he said. For 5 years we built what I thought was a real marriage. Not passionate like in the movies, but solid. Dependable. We had systems. I handled the finances because I was better with numbers. It's literally my job. I'm a forensic specialist in digital advertising fraud, which means I spend my days tracking money trails and building cases for corporate litigation. Graham handled the social calendar, the networking, the dinner parties with his colleagues. We lived in a 3-bedroom townhouse in the suburbs with a small backyard. Graham kept saying he'd turn into something nice someday. I worked long hours at the firm. He traveled for sales conferences. We had Friday date nights when our schedules aligned, usually Italian food and whatever movie was playing. We hosted his family for Thanksgiving and Christmas every year. We talked vaguely about starting a family when things settled down at work. I thought we were happy. Thought I knew him. I was wrong on both counts. 4 months ago, Graham came home from work with that slightly manic energy he got when he was excited about something. "I've been thinking," he said, dropping his messenger bag by the door. 40 is a big deal. I want to do something special. Not just dinner with mom and dad. Something people will remember. I looked up from my laptop where I was reviewing fraud case files. "What did you have in mind?" He grinned. I don't know. That's why I'm telling you. You're the planner. You're good at this stuff. Surprise me. So I did. I made it my mission. My project. My way of proving that even after 5 years of marriage, even after the daily routines had worn down the excitement of early romance, I still saw him. Still valued him. Still loved him. I researched venues for 3 weeks straight, visiting every event space in the city. The Grand Meridian was perfect. Exposed brick walls, vintage Edison bulbs, marble floors that caught the light just right. It had character without being pretentious. History without being stuffy. I booked it immediately. Then came the obsessive attention to detail that's both my greatest strength and my worst quality. I tasted 7 different menu options before settling on the right combination. I interviewed 3 jazz quartets before finding Mariah and her band. I worked with the bar manager to design a custom bourbon cocktail, honey orange bitters, a twist, that we named the Graham. The cake took 3 separate meetings with a pastry chef in the Arts District. Graham loved whiskey and motorcycles, so I commissioned a 4-tier whiskey barrel cake decorated with edible gold leaf and topped with a miniature replica of his Norton Commando. The detail work was insane, but I wanted it perfect. I created a Pinterest board with 200 ideas. I handwrote place cards for 200 guests in calligraphy I taught myself from YouTube videos at 11 o'clock at night. I compiled a photo slideshow spanning 40 years. Tracking down childhood pictures from his mother and college photos from old roommates who barely remembered him. I saved money from my quarterly bonuses. Cut back on everything. Lunches out, new clothes, the professional conference in Boston I'd wanted to attend. Every extra dollar went into our joint account in transfers I carefully marked Graham's party. By the week before his birthday, I'd accumulated $18,000 dedicated entirely to this celebration. My brother Marcus helped me pick up supplies on weekends. Printed programs, custom napkins, centerpiece arrangements from a florist in the warehouse district. My mother watched me work myself into exhaustion and said gently, "Honey, it's just a birthday party. You don't have to prove anything." But I did. I wanted to prove I was still the woman Graham fell in love with. That I wasn't just the wife who handled the finances and worked late and sometimes forgot to ask about his day. I wanted him to walk into that ballroom and feel overwhelmed by how much thought, care, and love I'd poured into every detail. 3 months before the party, I found something that should have stopped me cold. I was taking Graham's dry cleaning, his gray suit, the one he wore to client dinners, and I felt something in the inner pocket. A hotel key card. The Fairmont in San Francisco. The date stamped on it was from a weekend he'd told me he was at a motorcycle rally in Sturgis. I stood in our bedroom holding that piece of plastic, my mind already running through explanations. Maybe he'd stopped in San Francisco on the way home. Maybe one of his buddies had given it to him by mistake. Maybe there was a perfectly reasonable explanation. I asked him about it casually that night over dinner. He laughed it off. Oh yeah, the rally got rained out. A few of us grabbed hotel rooms to wait out the storm. Must have kept the key card by accident. It made sense. I wanted it to make sense. Then there were the texts. His phone would light up at midnight, 1 in the morning. He'd glance at the screen, smile slightly, and put it face down on the nightstand. When I asked who was texting so late, he'd say, "Just work stuff," or "The guy's planning the next ride." Vanessa's name started coming up more frequently. His college ex-girlfriend who'd become some big-shot venture capitalist. He'd mention her casually over breakfast. "Vanessa says the tech sector's shifting," or "Vanessa's firm is raising another fund." Each time, I felt a small flutter of unease that I immediately pushed down. I had no proof. Just suspicions. Just a hotel key card and late-night texts and a name mentioned too often. And I was busy planning his perfect party. The week before Graham's birthday, everything came together beautifully. The venue confirmed every detail. The jazz quartet sent me recordings of their rehearsal. The pastry chef texted photos of the finished cake. It was stunning. I'd coordinated travel arrangements for out-of-state family, confirmed RSVPs from 200 guests, and created the photo slideshow that would play during dinner. I worked late every night that week, balancing my fraud cases at work with party logistics. My inbox was full of vendor confirmations, seating chart revisions, last-minute menu adjustments. Marcus helped me pick up the programs from the printer. My mother asked if maybe I was overdoing it, but I felt energized. Purposeful. This party was my gift to Graham. Tangible proof that I saw him, valued him, loved him. The night before the event, I laid out my emerald green dress. The one I'd bought specifically for this party. The one that made me feel confident and beautiful instead of like the forensic specialist who spent 12 hours a day analyzing spreadsheets. I paired it with my grandmother's pearl necklace, the one she'd given me a week before she died, telling me it would bring luck and love. I stood in front of our bedroom mirror practicing my smile. Tomorrow 200 people would see Graham and me together. They'd witness the celebration I'd created for him. They'd understand that we were solid. Happy. Tomorrow he'd remember why he married me. Tomorrow everything would be perfect. I believed that completely. Even with the hotel key card hidden in my jewelry box. Even with the late-night texts I'd been ignoring. Even with Vanessa's name coming up just a little too often. I believed it because I'd invested too much to consider any other possibility. The emerald dress hung ready on the closet door. The pearls sat in their velvet box on my dresser. My heels were polished and waiting by the bed. I had absolutely no idea that in less than 24 hours, my husband would publicly humiliate me in front of 200 witnesses, give my seat to his ex-girlfriend, and set in motion a chain of events that would completely dismantle the life I thought we'd built together. But that hotel key card should have told me. The late-night text should have told me. Vanessa's name mentioned too casually and too often should have told me. I just wasn't ready to listen. Not yet. Not until I was standing at that head table with my hand frozen above my chair, hearing the whispers start behind me, watching his family laugh at my humiliation, and finally understanding that the party I'd planned so carefully wasn't a celebration of our marriage. It was the stage for my replacement. The Grand Meridian Ballroom looked exactly as I'd imagined it during those late nights planning on my laptop. Edison bulbs hung in perfect rows across the exposed brick ceiling, casting warm amber light that made everything look softer, more romantic. The white linens on each table were crisp and gleaming. Centerpieces of white roses and eucalyptus, simple but elegant, sat at precise intervals. The jazz quartet was set up in the corner near the vintage bar, playing something smooth and understated that provided ambience without overwhelming conversation. Guests started arriving at 7. I watched from near the entrance as they filtered in, their eyes widening slightly as they took in the space. I heard the compliments in real time. "This is beautiful. Quinn really outdid herself. Look at those centerpieces, gorgeous." Each compliment felt like validation. Like proof that the 4 months of obsessive planning had been worth it. I moved through the crowd in my emerald dress, greeting people, accepting hugs from Graham's colleagues, making small talk with his college friends I'd met a handful of times over the years. Everyone was impressed. Everyone kept telling me what an incredible job I'd done. Graham worked the room like he always did at these things, confident, charming, shaking hands and laughing at jokes. He looked handsome in the tailored navy suit I'd bought him for our 5th anniversary last year. His hair was freshly cut. His shoes were polished. He was playing the part of the gracious birthday honoree perfectly. For the first hour everything felt right. Better than right. It felt like success. I caught his eye once from across the room. He was talking to someone from his sales team, but he looked over at me and winked. Actually winked. My heart lifted. This was good. We were good. The party was bringing us together, reminding us of what we had. I started to relax. Started to let myself enjoy the evening I'd worked so hard to create. The servers began circulating with the appetizers I'd selected. Truffle-infused crab cakes, prosciutto-wrapped figs, miniature beef Wellingtons. I watched people's faces light up as they tasted them. The custom bourbon cocktails were flowing. The Graham was apparently a hit. I overheard at least 3 people asking the bartender what was in it. At 7:30, the event coordinator gave me a subtle signal. Dinner service was about to begin. Time for everyone to find their seats. I made my way toward the head table, weaving through guests who were checking place cards and settling into chairs. My heels clicked against the marble floor. My heart was beating fast, but it was good nervous energy. Excited energy. This was it. The formal part of the evening. Dinner, speeches, the cake cutting. All the moments I'd choreographed so carefully. I could see the head table now. Graham was already seated, talking animatedly with someone I couldn't quite see from this angle. My chair sat empty beside him, the one with the place card I'd lettered myself in careful calligraphy. Quinn Holloway. Right where I belonged. I approached with a smile, ready to sit down, ready to finally relax and enjoy the meal I'd spent weeks perfecting with the catering team. That's when everything stopped feeling right. Graham looked up as I reached for my chair. Our eyes met, and something in his expression made my stomach drop. It wasn't warmth. It wasn't the shared intimacy of partners hosting an event together. It was discomfort, maybe even annoyance. He leaned toward me close enough that I could smell his cologne, the Tom Ford I'd given him last Christmas. His voice was low, almost gentle, like he was trying to soften what he was about to say. Not here. Sit with the guests. The words didn't make sense at first. They were English, I understood each one individually, but strung together like that they created something incomprehensible. What? I said, and my voice came out smaller than I intended. Graham didn't repeat himself. He was already looking past me at someone standing just behind my right shoulder. And his whole face transformed. His eyes softened. His mouth curved into that boyish smile I used to think was reserved for me. His posture opened up in a way that felt intimate, welcoming. Vanessa, he said louder now, warm and confident. You should take this spot instead. You've earned it. I turned. Vanessa Morrison stood there in a champagne silk dress that probably cost more than I made in a month. She was 6 feet tall in her heels, willowy and blonde and perfect in that effortless way some women are. Her makeup was flawless. Her hair fell in smooth waves over her shoulders. And she was smiling. Not a polite, uncomfortable smile. Not an apologetic grimace acknowledging the awkwardness of this moment. A smirk. Small but unmistakable. She didn't say, "Are you sure?" Or, "I couldn't possibly," or any of the things a normal person would say when offered someone else's seat at their own husband's birthday party. She just moved forward and slid into my chair like she'd been expecting it all along. Like this was choreographed. The realization hit me with physical force. This wasn't spontaneous. This wasn't Graham making some weird judgment call in the moment. This was planned. They'd discussed this. Decided on it. Maybe even rehearsed it. I was still standing there, my hand hovering stupidly above the chair back when I heard it. Laughter. Not from strangers. Not from the far corners of the room where people might not understand what was happening. From the table directly adjacent to ours. Graham's family table. His mother Diane actually clapped her hands together, delighted, her diamond tennis bracelet catching the light. She looked like she was watching the finale of her favorite show, the moment she'd been waiting for all season. His father Kenneth raised his scotch glass toward Vanessa. A toast. A welcome home. His sister Bethany leaned toward her husband and whispered something behind her hand. They both turned to look at me, and Bethany's expression was pure satisfaction. Like she'd just won something she'd been competing for. They weren't uncomfortable. They weren't confused about what was happening. They were enjoying this. The whispers started behind me. I could hear them even over the jazz quartet, even over the ambient noise of 200 people settling into their seats. Did he just... Oh my God. Is that his ex-girlfriend? I looked toward my family's table near the back of the room. My mother's fork had stopped halfway to her mouth. Her face was white, drained of all color. She looked like she might be sick. My brother Marcus had half risen from his chair, his jaw clenched tight, his hands in fists on the white tablecloth. I could see him calculating whether he could cross the room and punch Graham without making things worse. My father just stared, his expression dark and thunderous. But they said nothing. What could they say? This was Graham's birthday party. His event. His night. Standing up and causing a scene would only make things worse for me. So they sat there in stunned, helpless silence while Graham's family laughed. The humiliation was complete. Public. Witnessed by 200 people who would remember this moment, talk about it later, turn it into a story they told at other dinner parties. Every instinct I had screamed at me to run. To grab my purse from the coat check and flee through the nearest exit. To get to my car before the tears came, before the full weight of what had just happened crashed down on me. But I didn't run. Something else was rising through the humiliation. Something cold and clear and absolutely controlled. It moved through my chest like ice water, sharpening my thoughts, steadying my hands, clarifying everything. I smoothed down the front of my emerald dress. The fabric was soft under my palms, expensive, chosen specifically for this night. I adjusted my grandmother's pearls, feeling the familiar weight of them against my collarbone. I tucked a strand of dark hair behind my ear, and then I smiled. Not a big smile. just a small, pleasant curve of my lips. Carry on, I said, my voice clear and calm, projecting just enough to reach the nearby tables. Please don't let me interrupt. Graham's eyes widened slightly. Just for a second I saw surprise flicker across his face. He'd expected tears. He'd expected me to make a scene, to get emotional, to give him ammunition for whatever narrative he'd been building about me being difficult or unstable or too sensitive. I didn't give him that satisfaction. I turned on my heel, keeping my posture straight, my head high. I didn't rush. Didn't run. Just walked at a normal, unhurried pace toward the ballroom doors. People parted to let me through. I could feel their eyes following me. Could hear the whispers getting louder behind me. But I didn't look back. I pushed through the heavy oak doors and stepped into the marble hallway outside the ballroom. The doors swung shut behind me, muffling the jazz quartet and the murmur of 200 voices. The silence was sudden and absolute. My hands started shaking. The adrenaline I'd been suppressing flooded my system all at once. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. But my mind stayed razor-sharp and crystal clear. Because Graham didn't know something. Something I'd been keeping to myself for 3 months, ever since I found that hotel key card. I hadn't just been planning his birthday party. I'd been investigating him. And I had proof of everything. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and leaned against the cool marble wall of the hallway. The Grand Meridian's foyer was empty except for a coat check attendant who was studiously pretending not to notice the woman in the emerald dress who'd just fled the ballroom. Somewhere behind those oak doors, my husband was celebrating his birthday with his ex-girlfriend sitting in my seat. But I wasn't thinking about that anymore. I was thinking about what came next. I scrolled through my contacts and found the name I needed. Sophia Pacheco. Blackwell & Associates. I'd programmed her into my phone 5 weeks ago under Espidental, just in case Graham ever looked. My finger hovered over the call button. This was it. The moment I'd been preparing for without fully admitting to myself what I was preparing for. Once I made this call, once I set things in motion, there would be no going back. No pretending this was a misunderstanding. No salvaging what was left of my marriage. I pressed call. She answered on the second ring. Quinn. It's happening, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. Execute Plan A. You're sure? Sophia's voice was calm, professional. We'd gone over this scenario twice in her office. I'm standing in a hallway while my husband celebrates with his mistress in my seat at the party I planned. Yes, I'm sure. Hey. I'll file the papers first thing Monday morning. In the meantime, document everything that happens tonight. Photos if possible. Witnesses. I want a clear record of the public humiliation. Understood. Quinn. Sophia's voice softened slightly. Are you okay? Was I okay? I was standing in a marble hallway in a dress I'd bought to make my husband proud, after being publicly replaced by the woman he'd been sleeping with for months. My hands were shaking. My heart was racing. I could feel the weight of 200 people's pity settling onto my shoulders. I will be, I said. I hung up and made my second call. Marcus answered immediately. I'm coming out there. No. Stay where you are. I need you inside in about 15 minutes. Just be visible. Let them know I have family here who saw everything. Quinn, what he did. I know. I know exactly what he did. And I know exactly what I'm going to do about it. Just trust me. 15 minutes. I could hear the reluctance in his silence, but finally he said, okay. 15 minutes. Third call. Jennifer Liu. The Grand Meridian's events manager and my former college roommate who owed me a significant favor from when I'd helped her sister avoid a predatory business loan 3 years ago. Jen, it's me. Oh honey, I saw. I'm so sorry. Don't be sorry. Just tell me you're ready. Pause. Then quieter. Are you sure about this? It's going to cause a scene. That's the point. Hey. Give me your signal and I'll make it happen. Fourth call. This one was going to be interesting. I dialed American Express Fraud Protection. A automated system answered, asking me to describe my concern. I need to report suspicious use of a corporate credit card for personal expenses, I said clearly. The system transferred me to a live person. A woman with a crisp, efficient voice. This is Amanda with Fraud Protection. Can you describe the suspicious activity? A corporate card issued by Morrison Capital Holdings has been used to pay for personal event expenses. Specifically, a private birthday party at the Grand Meridian Ballroom. The cardholder is Vanessa Morrison, and I believe this constitutes embezzlement of corporate funds for personal use. I could hear typing on the other end. And what is your relationship to the cardholder or the corporation? I'm the wife of the person whose party was funded with the corporate card. I have receipts showing the deposit was made from Morrison Capital Holdings business account. More typing. I'll need you to email documentation to our fraud investigation department. But based on what you're describing, we can flag the account immediately for investigation. How quickly can you freeze the card? If there's evidence of policy violation, we can freeze it within the hour pending investigation. Perfect. I thanked her and hung up. Then I stood there in that empty hallway, my back against the marble wall, and let myself feel it for just a moment. The betrayal. The humiliation. The shattering of everything I'd believed about my life. But I only let myself feel it for 30 seconds. Because feeling it wouldn't change anything. Action would. And I'd been preparing for this action for 3 months. Ever since that Tuesday morning when everything started to unravel. I'd been gathering Graham's dry cleaning. Something I did every other week because the cleaner was on my way to work. I was going through his pockets checking for receipts or business cards or the random things he forgot in there. That's when I found it. A hotel key card. The Fairmont in San Francisco. The date stamped on the magnetic strip was from 2 weekends ago. I stood in our bedroom holding that piece of plastic, my mind immediately cataloging the discrepancy. Graham had told me he was going to Sturgis that weekend for a motorcycle rally with his college buddies. I'd even helped him pack jeans, t-shirts, his leather jacket. San Francisco wasn't anywhere near Sturgis. I wanted to dismiss it. Wanted to believe there was a reasonable explanation. Maybe he'd stopped in San Francisco on the way home. Maybe one of his friends had given him the key card by accident. But I'm a forensic specialist in digital advertising fraud. I trace money for a living. I find patterns. I build cases. And my brain was already working, already questioning, already pulling at the thread. I didn't confront Graham that night. Instead, I did what I do best. I investigated. I pulled up our credit card statements on my laptop after he fell asleep. I searched for charges from that weekend. No charges in Sturgis. No gas stations on the route to South Dakota. No hotel charges there. But there were 2 charges at the Fairmont in San Francisco. Both hotel rooms. Adjoining. Booked under Graham's name on his corporate card. 2 rooms. I took screenshots. Saved them in a password-protected folder labeled, Tax Documents 2019, that Graham would never think to open. Then I started looking deeper. I went back through 6 months of credit card statements. I found patterns. Weekend trips that didn't quite line up with what he'd told me. Dinner charges in cities he claimed not to have visited. Hotel rooms. Always 2 rooms. Always adjoining when I cross-referenced the booking numbers. Someone was traveling with him. Someone who required their own room to maintain appearances. 2 months before the party, I was doing my monthly review of our joint bank account. Something I'd done for years as part of managing our finances, when I saw something that made my blood run cold. A wire transfer. $25,000. From Morrison Capital Holdings. Vanessa's company. The memo line said Party Fund. I stared at that screen for a full 10 minutes, my coffee going cold beside me. Graham hadn't mentioned this. We'd been saving $18,000 for his party. Money from our regular income, my bonuses, our joint savings. Why would Vanessa deposit $25,000 into our joint marital account? I traced the transaction using the forensic tools I had access to through work. The transfer came from Morrison Capital Holdings' corporate operating account, not Vanessa's personal account. It was categorized as a business expense. A birthday party as a business expense. I checked the date of the transfer against Graham's calendar. It coincided exactly with a business trip he'd taken to Seattle 3 weeks earlier. I pulled hotel records using access I probably shouldn't have used for personal reasons, but I was past caring about protocols. 2 rooms at the Four Seasons in Seattle. Same dates. Booked under different names but charged to the same corporate card. Always 2 rooms. Always the same pattern. I started documenting everything. Every trip. Every charge. Every discrepancy. I built a spreadsheet with dates, locations, amounts. I cross-referenced his calendar against credit card charges against hotel bookings. The picture that emerged was breathtaking in its consistency. For 8 months, Graham had been traveling with Vanessa. They'd been careful. Separate rooms, business justifications, corporate cards to avoid our joint accounts. But they'd left a trail. They always leave a trail. And then one night, about 6 weeks before the party, I found the messages. Graham had an iPad he used occasionally for reading news articles and watching videos in bed. Years ago, he'd set it up to sync with our shared iCloud account, mostly so family photos would automatically appear on all our devices. He'd forgotten about that setting. I hadn't. One night while he was in the shower, I opened my laptop and accessed the message history from his iPad. What I found made my stomach turn. Months of messages between Graham and Vanessa. Starting casual and professional, gradually becoming flirtatious, then intimate, then explicit. Then planning. They talked about our future together. About Vanessa's new fundraising and how they needed to keep things quiet until the timing was right. About how to handle the Quinn situation after the party. The Quinn situation. That's what I was to them. A situation to be handled. I read message after message, watching my marriage dissolve in iMessage bubbles. The party will be perfect, Vanessa had written. A way to introduce us publicly without making it seem sudden. I just need to get through it without Quinn making a scene, Graham had replied. Then we can file quietly. Make it clean. Your family already knows, Vanessa wrote. They're on board. His family knew. They'd all known. They were all in on it. The party I was planning wasn't a celebration of Graham's birthday. It was a stage for my replacement. A public debut of their relationship. A way to transition me out and Vanessa in with minimal disruption to their social circles. I screenshotted everything. Every message. Every photo. Every casual mention of their future plans. I saved it all to an encrypted cloud drive. And then I closed my laptop and went to bed beside my husband like nothing had changed. Because nothing had changed. Not yet. But it would. 5 weeks before the party, I made an appointment with Sophia Pacheco at Blackwell & Associates. She specialized in high-asset divorces and marital fraud. I brought her everything. Printed copies of messages, credit card statements, hotel records, the wire transfer documentation. She read through it all carefully, making notes, occasionally looking up at me with something like sympathy. When she finished, she sat back in her leather chair and smiled. This is airtight, she said. Community property laws mean that $25,000 deposited into your joint account belongs half to you, regardless of who put it there. And the pattern of deception, the use of corporate funds, the evidence of a sustained affair, we can use all of it. What do you recommend? I asked. Let the party happen, she said. Let him make his move publicly. Then we dismantle everything he's built using the same skills that made you good at your job. So that's what I did. I kept planning. Kept smiling. Kept playing the devoted wife. And I waited for Graham to show 200 people exactly who he really was. Now, standing in this marble hallway with my phone in my hand and my marriage in ruins, I knew the waiting was over. It was time to act. I checked my reflection in the gilded hallway mirror one last time. My lipstick had faded slightly from the champagne I'd been nursing earlier, before everything fell apart. I reapplied it carefully, a deep berry shade that complemented the emerald dress. My hands were steadier now. The initial shock had burned off, replaced by something colder and more focused. I looked composed. Professional. Like a woman who had everything under control. Good. That's exactly what I needed them to see when I walked back in there. I dropped my lipstick back into my clutch and smoothed down the front of my dress one more time. Through the oak doors, I could hear the muffled sounds of the party continuing. Jazz music. Laughter. The clink of silverware on china as dinner service began. They thought this was over. They thought I'd fled embarrassed and defeated. They had no idea what was coming. I pushed through the ballroom doors. The scene inside had shifted since I'd left. Guests were seated now, dinner plates being set in front of them by the catering staff I'd hired. The first course, a butternut squash soup with crispy sage, was making its way around the room. People were eating, drinking, talking. The party had moved on from my public humiliation like it was just an awkward moment they could politely ignore. Graham was standing at the head table now, one arm casually draped across the back of Vanessa's chair, my chair, telling some animated story to the people around him. His other hand held a glass of bourbon. He looked relaxed. Happy even. Vanessa sat beside him, laughing at whatever he was saying, her hand resting on his forearm in a gesture of casual intimacy that made my stomach turn. Nobody noticed me at first. I was just another guest moving through the ballroom. But then I walked toward the small stage where the jazz quartet had set up. Mariah, the lead singer, saw me approaching. We'd had a very specific conversation yesterday afternoon when I'd called to confirm the final details of their performance. She'd thought I was joking at first. Then she'd realized I wasn't. Now she caught my eye and gave me a subtle nod. I stepped onto the stage. Mariah handed me the microphone without a word, then signaled to her bandmates. The music cut off mid-phrase. The sudden silence was jarring. Conversations faltered. People looked up from their soup, confused. 200 faces turned toward me, illuminated by the warm glow of Edison bulbs. I let the silence stretch for just a moment. Let the anticipation build. Then I smiled, warm, gracious, the smile of a woman who's about to give a heartfelt toast. "Good evening, everyone," I said, my voice carrying easily across the ballroom. "I'm Quinn Holloway, and for those of you who don't know me, I'm Graham's wife." I paused, letting that word land. Wife. Present tense. "I want to thank you all for coming tonight to celebrate Graham's 40th birthday. It means so much to both of us to see you here, especially those of you who traveled from out of state. Your presence makes this night truly special." Scattered applause. Uncertain smiles. People weren't sure where this was going yet. At the head table, Graham had gone very still. Vanessa's hand had slipped off his forearm. "As most of you know, I planned this entire celebration," I continued, my tone light and conversational. "I spent 4 months coordinating every detail because I wanted Graham's milestone birthday to be perfect. The venue, the menu, the music, that beautiful cake you'll get to enjoy later. Every single element was chosen with care." More nods. A few people glanced at Graham, then back at me. Of course, planning an event of this scale requires significant resources. The Grand Meridian doesn't come cheap. Neither does a live jazz quartet or premium bar service for 200 people, or a custom whiskey barrel cake with edible gold leaf. I was still smiling. Still pleasant. Like I was just making polite small talk about party logistics. The total cost came to $43,000. Quite an investment, wouldn't you say? But worth it for the man I love. The room was completely quiet now. You could have heard a pin drop. "What's interesting though," I continued, "is how that $43,000 was funded. I thought Graham and I had been saving together from our joint account. The account we've shared since we got married 5 years ago. The account that's supposed to represent our partnership, our shared financial future." I turned to look directly at Graham. His face had drained of all color. "But when I reviewed our bank statements, and I do that regularly, it's kind of what I do for a living, I discovered something fascinating. Only $18,000 came from our actual savings. The other $25,000 was deposited 6 weeks ago via wire transfer from Morrison Capital Holdings." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Several people turned to look at each other, confused. "For those keeping track," I said, "Morrison Capital Holdings is Vanessa Morrison's venture capital firm. That's Vanessa right there." I gestured toward the head table, sitting in what was supposed to be my seat at my husband's birthday party. Every eye in the room swung toward Vanessa. She looked like she wanted to disappear through the floor. Now I asked myself, why would my husband's ex-girlfriend wire $25,000 into our joint marital account? That's incredibly generous, isn't it? Unless... I paused, tilting my head thoughtfully. Unless it's not generosity at all. Unless it's an investment. In her future. The silence was absolute now. Nobody was eating. Nobody was drinking. They were all staring at me transfixed. See, I did some more digging. It's kind of my specialty actually. I'm a forensic specialist. I track money trails and find patterns for a living. And the pattern I found was absolutely fascinating. I started walking slowly across the stage, my heels clicking softly on the wooden platform. Hotel reservations in San Francisco, Seattle, and Miami over the past 4 months. Always 2 rooms booked. Always on weekends. Graham told me he was at motorcycle rallies or industry conferences. Always paid for by Morrison Capital Holdings corporate card. Someone in the back of the room audibly gasped. "And this venue?" I gestured around the ballroom. "The Grand Meridian that we're standing in right now? The deposit was paid with Vanessa's corporate American Express card. I have the receipt." along with receipts for the cake, the jazz quartet, and about half the catering. Graham was standing now, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Quinn, that's enough." "Oh, I'm just getting started, honey," I said sweetly, turning to face him directly. "Because here's where it gets really interesting. I also found messages. Text messages from your iPad that backs up to our shared iCloud account. Did you forget about that feature?" His eyes went wide with something close to panic. "Messages discussing our future together," I continued, my voice carrying to every corner of the room. "Messages about how to handle the Quinn situation after the party. About filing for divorce quietly, so it wouldn't disrupt your work relationships or Vanessa's fundraising round." The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Several people had their phones out now, recording this. Perfect. Let them record it. Let them post it on social media. Let everyone see. "So really," I said, raising my voice to be heard over the growing noise, "this isn't my husband's 40th birthday party funded by our marriage. This is Vanessa Morrison's coming out party, funded by her corporate accounts, announcing to all of you that she and Graham are together. And I, the actual legal wife, was just supposed to sit in the guest section and watch it happen. Quietly. Gratefully." My voice had gone hard on those last words. Graham was moving toward the stage now, his face flushed with anger or embarrassment. I couldn't tell which and didn't care. "You're being ridiculous," he hissed as he reached the stage. "Making a scene." "Am I?" I turned to face the room again. "Because I have screenshots, bank records, hotel receipts, a complete financial trail documenting an 8-month affair funded partially by our joint marital assets. I'd say that's worth making a scene about, wouldn't you?" "This is insane," Vanessa said, standing up. She looked furious and terrified in equal measure. "Graham, we should leave." "Oh, please don't leave on my account," I said pleasantly. "You've invested so much in this evening. $25,000, plus the venue deposit, plus all those hotel rooms. You should stay and enjoy it." I glanced at my watch. Right on schedule. Although, actually, you might want to leave in the next few minutes. Because there's about to be a problem with the payment. As if on cue, Jennifer appeared at the ballroom entrance. She'd changed into her professional events manager blazer and had her tablet in hand. She looked appropriately distressed. "I'm so sorry to interrupt," she said, her voice carrying across the now silent room, "but we have an urgent issue with the billing for tonight's event. The credit card used for the deposit has been reported for fraudulent use." The timing was perfect. Flawless. Vanessa's face went white. "What? That's impossible." "Is it?" I asked, turning to her with mock concern. "Because I called American Express Fraud Protection about 45 minutes ago. I had some questions about whether a corporate card issued for business expenses can legally be used for personal events. Turns out it can't. It's actually considered embezzlement if the expenses aren't business-related." I let that word hang in the air. Embezzlement. "And I'm fairly certain," I continued, "that your board of directors would agree my husband's birthday party doesn't qualify as a legitimate business expense for Morrison Capital Holdings." The color drained from Vanessa's face completely. Her venture capital firm was in the middle of raising a major new fund. I'd done my research. A whiff of financial impropriety could tank the whole thing. "You can't do this," she breathed. "I already did. Your corporate card is frozen pending investigation. Which means the venue deposit, all the advance payments to vendors. Everything is now in dispute." Jennifer stepped forward, playing her role perfectly. "I'm afraid if we can't confirm valid payment in the next 30 minutes, we're required by our insurance to shut down the event immediately. Health department regulations prohibit us from continuing food and beverage service when there's a payment dispute." Chaos erupted. Graham grabbed my arm hard enough to hurt. "Fix this. Quinn, fix this right now." I yanked my arm away, my voice dropping to ice. "Fix it? The way you fixed our marriage by sleeping with your ex for 8 months? The way you fixed tonight by giving my seat to her and telling me to sit with the guests? Why exactly should I fix anything, Graham?" "Because you're being vindictive and petty." "I'm being honest," I said. "For the first time in months, I'm being completely, brutally honest in front of all these people. You wanted me in the guest section? Fine. I'm a guest now. And guests don't solve the host's problems." Around us, the ballroom had descended into complete disorder. Vanessa was on her phone, frantically trying to call someone, probably her CFO or her lawyer. Graham's parents looked horrified. His sister had stopped smiling. My brother Marcus appeared at my elbow. "We good. We're perfect. Thank you for being here." He grinned. "Wouldn't miss it for anything." I walked back to the microphone one last time. The ballroom had descended into complete chaos. Guests were standing now, some gathering their things, others clustered in groups whispering frantically. Vanessa was still on her phone, her face pale and stricken. Graham stood frozen near the stage, looking like he couldn't quite process what was happening. Jennifer was at the entrance with her tablet, playing her role perfectly, fielding questions from confused guests about the payment situation, maintaining the professional veneer of someone just doing her job. I tapped the microphone twice. The feedback screeched through the speakers, cutting through the noise. Everyone turned to look at me again. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, my voice calm and clear, "I apologize for the disruption to your evening. Unfortunately, due to payment issues that are entirely out of my control, it appears this celebration will be ending earlier than planned." I paused, letting that sink in. "I encourage you all to grab a slice of that spectacular cake on your way out. It really did cost a fortune and it would be a shame to waste it. Thank you for coming. I hope you enjoyed the party while it lasted." I set the microphone down carefully and walked off the stage. Graham caught up to me at the ballroom doors. His hand closed around my wrist, not hard enough to hurt but firm enough to stop me. "We need to talk about this," he said, his voice low and urgent. "You're overreacting. This is insane." I yanked my wrist free and stepped close to him, close enough that only he could hear me. "My attorney will be in touch," I said, my voice ice cold. "Sophia Pacheco at Blackwell & Associates. She'll explain how community property works in this state, and why that $25,000 Vanessa deposited into our joint account belongs half to me. She'll also explain what happens when someone uses marital assets to fund an affair." His eyes widened. You can't." "I already have," I said. "You made a choice tonight, Graham. You chose to make me small, to erase me, to reduce me to a guest in my own life. I'm just making sure everyone sees exactly what that choice looks like." I turned and walked away without looking back. Behind me, I could hear the venue staff beginning to shut down. Lights coming up, music equipment being packed away, servers starting to clear tables. The party was over. But for me, everything was just beginning. The first call came at 6:15 the next morning. I was lying in my childhood bedroom at my mother's house, staring at the ceiling, trying to convince my body that sleep was still possible even though my mind was racing at 1,000 miles per hour. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Graham's name flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again 2 minutes later. Then again. Then again. By noon he'd called 17 times. I didn't answer any of them. The text started around 1 in the afternoon. "People are talking. You embarrassed me. You ruined everything." I deleted it without responding. 20 minutes later. "I'm sorry. Let's talk this through. We can fix this." Delete. An hour after that. "Please. Quinn, please. I made a mistake. Don't throw away 5 years over one stupid mistake." I stared at that one for a long moment. One mistake. Like the affair had been a single lapse in judgment instead of 8 months of deliberate deception. I blocked his number. Marcus had stayed with me that first weekend. He'd driven me to our mother's house right after the party while I sat in the passenger seat trying not to fall apart completely. Now he sat across from me at her kitchen table, drinking coffee while Mom stress-baked in the background. She'd made 3 batches of chocolate chip cookies, 2 loaves of banana bread, and was currently working on a lemon pound cake. The kitchen smelled like sugar and butter and comfort. "You should eat something," Marcus said, pushing a plate of cookies toward me. I picked one up but didn't bite into it. "I'm not hungry." "You need to eat anyway." My mother turned from the mixer. "He's right, sweetheart. You've had nothing but coffee since last night." I took a small bite of the cookie to appease them. It was good, crispy edges, soft center, exactly the way I liked them. But it tasted like cardboard in my mouth. Marcus was scrolling through his phone, his expression darkening. "Have you looked at social media?" "No." "Probably smart." He turned his phone around to show me anyway. "But you should know, the story's spreading." I looked at the screen. Someone had posted a video from the party. It was shaky, clearly filmed on a phone someone was trying to hide, but the audio was clear enough. My voice amplified through the microphone. Only $18,000 came from our actual savings. The other $25,000 was deposited 6 weeks ago via wire transfer from Morrison Capital Holdings. The video had been viewed 43,000 times. The comments section was a war zone. Some people were calling me vindictive, dramatic, crazy, but more, significantly more, were on my side. Did you see what he did to her at the beginning? Gave her seat away to his mistress. She planned this entire party and he humiliated her in front of everyone. She had every right. The fact that she documented everything and exposed them both? Iconic. Marcus scrolled further. There are like 6 different videos from different angles. It's all over Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. Some people are calling it the revenge party of the year. Great, I said flatly. I'm viral. You're a hero to a lot of people, he corrected. Women especially. They're eating this up. My phone buzzed. A text from Sophia Pacheco. Saw the videos. Well done. He called my office this morning. Retained Richard Brennan from Sterling and Cross. Big firm. This is going to get ugly, but we're ready. I'll file Monday morning. Don't communicate with Graham directly. Let everything go through me. I texted back. Understood. Marcus leaned back in his chair. So what happens now? Till we wait, I said. Sophia files divorce papers Monday morning. Graham fights it. We go through discovery, mediation, probably a settlement. It'll take months. And Vanessa? I smiled thinly. Vanessa has bigger problems than me. By Wednesday, Vanessa's career was imploding in real time. The American Express investigation moved faster than I'd expected. Apparently, when you report potential embezzlement involving a corporate card, they take it seriously. By Tuesday afternoon, Morrison Capital Holdings Board of Directors had been notified. By Wednesday morning, Vanessa had been placed on administrative leave pending an internal audit. Marcus showed me the tech blog headlines over breakfast. Morrison Capital CEO placed on leave amid fraud investigation. Vanessa Morrison steps down during corporate card probe. The articles were careful with their language. Lots of alleged and pending investigation, but the damage was done. Morrison Capital was in the middle of raising a $50 million fund from institutional investors. A whiff of financial impropriety, even just the appearance of it, was catastrophic. By Friday, Vanessa had resigned as CEO to pursue other opportunities. The investors pulled out. The fundraise collapsed. Her reputation in the venture capital world was destroyed. I should have felt triumphant. This was exactly what I'd intended when I made that call to American Express. Instead, I felt hollow. Not because I regretted it. I didn't. Vanessa had made choices. Using corporate funds for personal expenses, participating in Graham's plan to publicly humiliate me, sitting in my seat with that smirk on her face. But watching her career disintegrate in real time reminded me that this whole situation was destroying multiple lives, not just mine. Then I remembered that smirk and the hollow feeling passed. Graham's family went completely silent. No calls. No texts. Nothing. His sister Bethany, who'd laughed so hard at my humiliation, blocked me on all social media. His father Kenneth, who'd raised his glass to Vanessa like she was the prodigal daughter returning home, avoided the country club he knew I occasionally visited with my parents. But on the 6th day his mother called. Quinn, Diane's voice was stiff, formal. I think we should talk. We met at a coffee shop near her house in the suburbs. It was a small place, the kind with mismatched furniture and local art on the walls. Diane was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with a cup of tea she wasn't drinking. She looked tired. Older than I remembered, though it had only been a week. I sat down across from her without ordering anything. What you did at the party was cruel, she said without preamble. I waited. Didn't defend myself. Just let her say what she'd come to say. Graham is my son. And yes, he made mistakes. But you humiliated him in front of 200 people. You destroyed his reputation, his relationship, his... Did you know? I interrupted. She stopped mid-sentence. What? I pulled out my phone, opened the screenshots I'd saved and slid it across the table. Did you know that Graham and Vanessa had been planning this for months? That they discussed how to handle the Quinn situation after the party? That the party I spent 4 months planning was supposed to be their public debut. Diane picked up my phone with trembling hands. I watched her face as she read through the messages. Watched the color drain from her cheeks. I didn't know, she whispered. He told us. He said you'd been growing apart. That you were too focused on work. That Vanessa was just a friend helping him with business connections. And you believed him? Yes. She looked up at me and for the first time, I saw something other than hostility in her eyes. Shame. I wanted to believe him. Vanessa was always so successful. Connected. I thought she'd be good for his career. I didn't know he was planning to leave you for her. You laughed, I said quietly. When he gave my seat away. You laughed. I know. Her voice broke slightly. I thought it was just. I don't know what I thought. That it was a joke maybe. Or that you'd agreed to it somehow. I didn't understand what was really happening until later and by then. She set my phone down carefully. I'm sorry. For laughing. For not seeing. For not questioning. I'm sorry. I nodded slowly. Thank you. We sat in silence for a long moment. What happens now? Diane asked. Now I divorce your son and move on with my life. She looked like she wanted to argue but she didn't. Instead she just nodded and stood up, leaving her untouched tea on the table. I watched her walk away and felt something shift. Not forgiveness exactly. But maybe the beginning of it. 2 weeks after the party my boss Margaret called me into her office. I'd been bracing for this conversation. Office gossip travels fast and I knew everyone at the firm had heard about what happened. I expected awkwardness, maybe some gentle suggestion that I take personal time to deal with things. Instead Margaret smiled at me. Close the door and sit down, she said. I did. I've been reviewing your case files, she began. Your work on the Pemberton fraud case last quarter was exceptional. And I heard about your personal situation, the way you documented everything, built an airtight case against your husband. I felt my face flush. I didn't mean to bring personal drama too. She held up a hand. Let me finish. We're creating a new division focused specifically on corporate fraud investigation. High-stakes cases, complex financial trails, the kind of work that requires someone who's not only technically skilled but also strategic and unshakable under pressure. She leaned forward. I want you to lead it. I stared at her. What? Significant raise. Full team under you. High-profile cases. You'd be perfect for it. Are you offering me a promotion because I exposed my husband's affair? Margaret laughed. I'm offering you a promotion because you're brilliant at forensic investigation. What you did in your personal life just confirmed what I already knew about your abilities. You're thorough, strategic, and you don't crack under pressure. Those are exactly the qualities we need for this position. The salary she quoted was almost triple what I was currently making. I accepted on the spot. Walking out of her office, I felt something I hadn't felt since before I found that hotel key card 3 months ago. Hope. The hope lasted exactly 11 days. That's how long it took for Sophia to call me with news that the first mediation session was scheduled. Next Tuesday, she said over the phone. 10 a.m. at our offices. Graham's retained Richard Brennan from Sterling and Cross. I knew that name. Everyone in the legal community knew that name. Sterling and Cross was the firm you hired when you wanted to play hardball, when you wanted to intimidate the other side into submission, when you had money to burn on aggressive litigation. That's an expensive choice, I said. Very expensive. Which tells me either Graham's more financially secure than we thought, or he's desperate enough to go into debt for this fight. I suspected it was the latter. Are we ready? We're ready, Sophia said confidently. I've got everything organized. Financial records, message screenshots, hotel receipts, the whole timeline. He won't know what hit him. The conference room at Blackwell & Associates was aggressively sterile. White walls, glass table, leather chairs that were probably expensive but felt cold and unwelcoming. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in a harsh, clinical glow. I arrived 15 minutes early with Sophia. We set up our materials on one side of the table. Organized folders, printed documentation, tablets with digital copies of everything. Graham arrived exactly on time with Richard Brennan. I hadn't seen my husband in person since the party 4 weeks ago. He looked different. Smaller somehow. His face was thinner with dark circles under his eyes. His suit was the same navy one he'd worn to the party, but it looked rumpled now, like maybe it hadn't been dry cleaned since. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Richard Brennan, on the other hand, was exactly what I'd expected. Late 50s, silver hair, expensive suit, confident posture. He carried a leather briefcase that probably cost more than my first car and had the bearing of someone who'd won a lot more battles than he'd lost. "Miss Holloway," he said, extending his hand across the table. "Richard Brennan. Pleasure to meet you, though I wish it were under different circumstances." I shook his hand briefly. His grip was firm, calculated to project strength without crossing into aggression. "Let's get started," Sophia said, settling into her chair with the ease of someone on home territory. Richard opened with demands, reading from a prepared list like he was ordering from a menu. Graham wanted the townhouse, half of my retirement accounts, and spousal support, specifically 3 years at $4,000 per month, because as Richard put it, Ms. Holloway's recent promotion has significantly changed the financial landscape of this marriage. I felt my jaw tighten. He wanted spousal support. From me. After everything. Sophia didn't flinch. She'd expected this. "Interesting," she said, her voice pleasant and professional. "Let me present our counter-proposal." She slid a folder across the table to Richard. He opened it, his eyes scanning the first page. "Miss Holloway keeps the townhouse," Sophia began, as she made the down payment with inheritance money from her grandmother, premarital assets that are well documented. "We have the bank records showing the transfer from her grandmother's estate directly into Ms. Holloway's personal account 6 months before the marriage." Richard made a note but said nothing. "The joint savings are split 50-50. That includes the $25,000 deposited by Vanessa Morrison from Morrison Capital Holdings." Graham's head snapped up. That money was a gift. A gift deposited into a joint marital account becomes marital property under state community property laws, Sophia said smoothly. "Half of it belongs to Ms. Holloway regardless of the source." Richard held up a hand. "Continue. Mr. Holloway will pay Ms. Holloway alimony for 3 years at $2,000 per month, calculated based on the 5-year duration of the marriage and his pattern of financial deception during that marriage." "Pattern of deception is a strong accusation," Richard said. Sophia slid another folder across the table. This one was thicker. Hotel receipts documenting Mr. Holloway's travel with Vanessa Morrison over an 8-month period. Credit card statements showing charges for gifts, dinners, and accommodations. And text messages from Mr. Holloway's iPad discussing plans for their future together and strategies for handling the Quinn situation. I watched Graham's face go pale. "Additionally," Sophia continued, her voice taking on an edge, "we have receipts showing that Mr. Holloway charged approximately $6,000 to his employer-issued corporate card for personal expenses directly related to his extramarital affair." Richard's expression tightened. "Corporate card fraud is a serious accusation." "It's a serious violation," Sophia agreed. "Mr. Holloway's employment contract and his company's ethics policy are quite clear about personal use of corporate resources. We have documentation of hotel rooms, dinners, and gifts charged to his corporate American Express card between January and August of this year. None of these expenses were business-related." Graham looked like he might be sick. Richard closed the folder carefully. "We'll need to review this documentation and reconvene." "Of course," Sophia said pleasantly. The mediation ended 20 minutes later with no agreement reached, but the power dynamic had shifted. Richard knew we had ammunition. Real, documented, legally actionable ammunition. As we gathered our materials, Graham finally looked at me directly. "Quinn," he started. "Don't," I said quietly. "Just don't." I walked out without looking back. 3 weeks later, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Please. I need to see you. Just coffee. Let me explain. Graham." I stared at the message for a long time. Sophia had explicitly told me not to communicate with Graham directly. Everything was supposed to go through attorneys. Meeting him in person was probably a terrible idea. I was curious. Curious about what explanation he thought he could possibly offer. Curious about whether he actually believed we could fix this. I texted back, "Downtown coffee house. Tomorrow. 2 p.m. 30 minutes, that's it." The cafe was busy with the afternoon rush. Freelancers on laptops, students studying, the hiss and grind of the espresso machine providing white noise. Graham was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups of coffee in front of him. One was my usual order. Medium roast, cream, no sugar. He'd remembered. He stood when he saw me, then seemed uncertain whether he should hug me or shake my hand or just sit back down. He chose the latter. I sat across from him and wrapped my hands around the warm cup without drinking. He looked worse than he had at mediation. Unshaven. His shirt was wrinkled. His hair needed cutting. "I miss you," he said immediately, like he'd been holding the words in and they burst out the moment I sat down. "Quinn, I miss you so much. I made a terrible mistake. Vanessa and I, it's over. It was never real. You're my wife. We can fix this." I sipped my coffee and waited. "The party," he continued, words tumbling out faster now. "That was her idea. The whole thing. She wanted to make some kind of statement, show everyone we were together. I should have said no. I should have protected you. I was weak and stupid and I'm so sorry." I set my cup down carefully. "Graham, I saw the messages. For months. You and Vanessa planning your future together. Discussing how to handle me after the party. That wasn't her idea. That was both of you." He reached across the table for my hand. I pulled back. "People make mistakes," he said desperately. "People get confused, they make bad choices, but that doesn't mean." "This wasn't a mistake," I interrupted. "A mistake is forgetting our anniversary or saying something hurtful in an argument. What you did was 8 months of deliberate choices. You chose to sleep with her. You chose to hide it from me. You chose to take her on trips while telling me you were at motorcycle rallies. You chose to let her deposit money into our joint account. You chose to plan a future with her while still sleeping in our bed every night." His eyes filled with tears. Actual tears. "I can change," he said. "I love you." I looked at him, really looked at him, and tried to find the man I'd married 7 years ago. The charming guy who'd taken notes during my presentation. The partner who'd cried during our wedding vows. But all I could see was the man who'd whispered, "Not here, sit with the guests," and given my seat to another woman. "No," I said quietly. "You don't love me. You love the life I built for us. You love that I handled the finances so you didn't have to think about them. You love that I planned the social events and made everything run smoothly. You love that I was stable and dependable and made your life easier." I stood up. "But you don't love me. If you loved me, you wouldn't have given my seat away. You wouldn't have humiliated me in front of 200 people. You wouldn't have erased me from your future while I was planning your birthday party. Quinn." "We're done, Graham. Sign the papers." I walked out of the cafe and didn't look back. This time I felt only relief. Thursday evening, 2 days after the coffee shop meeting, Sophia called me. "You need to come to my office," she said. "Tonight if possible. I found something." I drove downtown, my mind racing through possibilities. Had Graham done something stupid? Had Vanessa sued us? Had the American Express investigation uncovered something we could use? Sophia's office was on the 14th floor of a glass tower downtown. When I arrived, she had spreadsheets covering every surface of her desk. "Sit down," she said. I sat. "We subpoenaed Graham's financial records as part of discovery," she began. "Credit cards, bank statements, loan applications, everything." She turned her laptop toward me. The screen showed a spreadsheet with rows and rows of numbers, highlighted in different colors. "He's broke," she said bluntly. "Worse than broke. He's $83,000 in debt." I stared at the numbers, not quite processing. How is that possible? His salary is good. Our expenses were always manageable. Sophia pointed to specific line items, her finger tracing down the columns. Gifts for Vanessa. $5,000 at Tiffany's. $3,000 at Nordstrom. Hotel rooms in San Francisco, Seattle, Miami, always the high-end places. The Norton Commando motorcycle, $12,000. Dinners at expensive restaurants. Weekend trips. Jewelry. He's been financing this entire affair on credit for 8 months. The champagne silk dress. The confident way Vanessa had carried herself. The ease with which Graham had traveled for his business trips. All of it bought with borrowed money I'd known nothing about. The townhouse payments? I asked, my throat tight. Current, Sophia said. He couldn't hide those because they came from the joint account you monitored. But everything else. Credit cards in his name only, personal loans you didn't co-sign, even a payday loan from last month, he maxed them all out. Does Richard know? Not yet, They'll discover it in their own review of the documents, but we found it first. She leaned back in her chair. This changes everything. Graham isn't just unfaithful. He's financially reckless and buried in secret debt. If you stayed married to him, some of this debt could become your problem depending on state laws and timing. I felt sick. What do we do? Sophia smiled grimly. We use it as leverage. 2 days later, Richard Brennan called Sophia with a settlement offer. She conference called me into the conversation so I could hear it firsthand. My client is prepared to offer the following, Richard began, his voice carefully neutral. 50-50 split of all actual marital assets. Ms. Holloway keeps the townhouse based on the premarital inheritance documentation. Mr. Holloway will pay alimony at $2,000 per month for 3 years. And Mr. Holloway takes sole responsibility for all debts incurred in his name only during the marriage. That last part was key. Graham would own all $83,000 of his secret debt. After the call ended, Sophia looked at me. This is actually a fair offer, she said. Better than fair given that we could probably push for more. But it would mean months, maybe years of litigation. Court appearances. Depositions. Your name tied to his in public documents. More opportunities for things to get ugly. I thought about what I wanted. Did I want revenge? Did I want to drag Graham through the mud, expose every secret, make him pay in every possible way? Or did I want freedom? What do you recommend? I asked. Sophia smiled. I recommend freedom. You've already won, Quinn. You exposed him publicly. You protected your assets. You built a new career. You have a new life waiting for you. Dragging this out only keeps you tied to him. He was right. Let's take it, I said. I signed the settlement papers that night. 4 months after the party that ended my marriage, it was officially over. The ink on the settlement papers was barely dry when I started apartment hunting. I couldn't stay at my mother's house forever. As much as I appreciated her support, the stress baking, the constant offers of tea, the way she'd leave little encouraging notes on my pillow, I needed my own space. I needed to prove to myself that I could build something new from scratch. I spent 3 weekends touring apartments with a real estate agent named Patricia who didn't ask questions about why a recently divorced woman was looking for a 1-bedroom instead of trying to keep the family home. Most of the places were depressing. Cookie-cutter layouts in soulless buildings. Beige walls and laminate counters and the faint smell of other people's lives. Then Patricia showed me the loft. 8th floor of a converted warehouse building downtown. Exposed brick walls. Original hardwood floors that creaked slightly when you walked on them. Floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city skyline, offering a view that made the whole space feel bigger than its actual square footage. It was smaller than the townhouse Graham and I had shared. No yard. No second bedroom for the hypothetical children we talked vaguely about having someday. But it was mine. I made an offer that afternoon. The down payment came from my share of the townhouse sale plus the signing bonus from my new position. By the time all the paperwork cleared, I was the sole owner of a space that belonged entirely to me. Moving day was a Saturday in early October. The air had that crisp quality that made autumn feel like fresh starts and new possibilities. Marcus showed up at 8 in the morning with his truck and 2 of his friends from the gym. My parents arrived an hour later with coffee and donuts and an alarming amount of organizational supplies my mother had purchased from some home goods store. We spent the day hauling boxes up the elevator, assembling furniture from flat-packed boxes, arguing good-naturedly about whether the couch should face the windows or the TV. My mother made curtains for the bedroom, simple linen panels in a soft gray that filtered the morning light without blocking it completely. My father installed floating shelves in what would become my home office, making sure each one was perfectly level, checking and rechecking with the kind of meticulous care that made me realize where I'd gotten my attention to detail. Marcus brought pizza and beer around 6, when we were all exhausted and covered in dust and surrounded by empty cardboard boxes. We sat on my new couch, a deep gray sectional I'd chosen myself without having to compromise with anyone, and watched the sun set over the city. The sky turned orange and pink and purple, the buildings catching the light like they were on fire. You did it, Marcus said quietly, taking a sip of his beer. I looked around at the space. My artwork on the walls. Abstract pieces with bold colors that I'd always loved but Graham had said were too much for the townhouse. My books on the shelves organized the way I wanted them. My furniture, my choices, my life. Yeah, I said. I really did. For the first time in months, I felt something that wasn't anger or hurt or the hollow satisfaction of winning a battle. I felt peace. Work became my sanctuary. The new division I was leading, corporate fraud investigation, started with just 5 people. 3 senior analysts I'd worked with before, plus 2 new hires fresh from forensic accounting programs. We set up in a corner of the office that had previously been used for storage. I fought for better equipment, dual monitors for everyone, access to enhanced database tools, a proper conference room instead of the makeshift space we'd been assigned. Our first major case came in November. A manufacturing company suspected their CFO of embezzling funds through a network of shell companies. The board had noticed discrepancies but couldn't trace the money. That's where we came in. I assigned different team members to different aspects of the investigation. Bank records, vendor contracts, payment authorizations, travel expenses. We built a timeline spanning 3 years, tracking every suspicious transaction, every unusual pattern. The CFO had been clever. He'd hidden the money well, layering transactions through multiple accounts, using legitimate vendors as cover for fake invoices. But he'd left a trail. They always leave a trail. We found it, documented it, built a case so airtight that the company's legal team settled with the CFO before it ever went to court. The manufacturing company recovered $4 million. Our second case closed in January. An insurance fraud scheme involving falsified claims and kickbacks to medical providers. We traced the money through 6 states and 17 different accounts. Another win. By March, my boss Margaret was presenting our division at the quarterly leadership meeting. She stood in front of the entire firm's management team and called me the future of forensic investigation at this company. Industry publications started calling. Could I speak at a conference in Chicago? Would I be interested in writing an article about pattern recognition in fraud investigation? Did I have time for an interview about building effective forensic teams? My career, which I'd always been good at but never particularly passionate about, suddenly felt like more than just a job. It felt like purpose. I was making a real impact. Catching people who thought they were too smart to get caught. Protecting companies from internal threats. Using the same skills I'd used to dismantle my own husband's deception to help other people find the truth. I was good at this. Better than good. And people were finally recognizing it. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I stopped at a coffee shop near my office during my lunch break. It was a small place, the kind with mismatched furniture and local art on the walls and baristas who remembered your order. I'd started going there regularly, enjoying the anonymity of being just another customer instead of that woman from the viral party video. I was waiting for my latte when I saw her. Vanessa Morrison. She was sitting alone at a corner table looking at her laptop, wearing jeans and a plain sweater instead of the designer clothes I'd always seen her in. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. No makeup. No jewelry except for small stud earrings. She looked smaller somehow. Diminished. Our eyes met across the coffee shop. For a long moment we just stared at each other. Every instinct told me to grab my coffee and leave. To avoid the awkwardness, the potential confrontation, the reminder of everything that had happened. But I was tired of running from things. I picked up my latte and walked over to her table. Vanessa. She looked up at me, her expression wary. Quinn. I wasn't sure you'd speak to me. I sat down across from her without asking permission. I wasn't sure I would either. But I'm curious. What happened after everything? She closed her laptop slowly. You want the honest answer? I wouldn't have asked otherwise. She exhaled and I saw something in her face I'd never seen before. Exhaustion. Maybe even regret. I lost my firm, she said quietly. The board forced me out when the American Express investigation concluded. It didn't matter that I eventually paid everything back. The damage was done. Investors pulled out of the fundraise. Partners left. The whole thing collapsed. She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup like she needed something to hold on to. I had to liquidate everything to cover debts and legal fees. The condo, the car, the investment portfolio. I'm working as a consultant now. Small clients. Nothing like what I had before. I'm basically starting over. I should have felt satisfaction. This was exactly what I'd intended when I called American Express that night. But instead I felt something more complicated. Not quite sympathy, but recognition that her life had imploded just as thoroughly as mine had. "I'm sorry," she said, looking directly at me. "For what we did to you. For my part in it. It was cruel and cowardly. You deserved better than that." I considered her apology, weighed it against the memory of her smirk as she slid into my seat, against the months of secret planning, against the casual way she'd helped Graham erase me from his life. "Yes," I said finally. "I did deserve better. But in a strange way you gave me something unexpected." She looked confused. "Clarity," I continued. "I spent 5 years making myself smaller to fit into Graham's life. Making compromises. Ignoring my instincts. Convincing myself that stability was the same thing as happiness. You showed me exactly what that life was worth. What he was worth." Vanessa nodded slowly. "He contacted me last month. I felt a flicker of something. Not jealousy. Just curiosity. He wanted to try again," she continued. "Said he'd made a mistake. That we were good together. That we could make it work now that the divorce was final." "What did you say?" I said no. A bitter laugh. "Turns out he wasn't the prize either of us thought he was. He's broke, desperate, and still blaming everyone but himself for how his life turned out." We sat in silence for a moment, two women who'd both been changed by the same man's choices, who'd both lost something but maybe gained something too. "Are you happy now?" Vanessa asked. "I saw articles about your promotion. Your division's success." "I am," I said, surprised to realize I meant it. "Actually happy. Not comfortable or stable or settled. Happy." "I'm glad," she said, and she sounded like she meant it too. We talked for 20 more minutes. Not as friends, we'd never be that. But as two people who'd survived the same storm and come out the other side changed. When I left, I felt lighter somehow. The anger I'd been carrying for months, the sharp edges of betrayal and hurt, had finally smoothed into something I could hold without cutting myself on it. Not forgiveness exactly, but release. 9 months after the divorce was finalized, Graham called me. The number was new, he must have gotten a different phone, but his name popped up when it rang. I almost didn't answer. I'd moved on, built a new life. I didn't need to hear whatever he had to say. But curiosity won out. "Quinn," his voice sounded rough, tired. "I know I shouldn't call, but I needed you to know. I'm sorry. For everything. The party, Vanessa, the humiliation, all of it. I destroyed the best thing in my life." I sat down on my couch, looking out at the city skyline through my floor-to-ceiling windows and waited. "I'm in a bad place," he continued. "Financially, I mean. The debt's crushing me. I had to sell the Norton, move to a smaller place. Work's been rough. They almost fired me over the corporate card thing. And I think about you all the time. About what we had. What I threw away." There was a long pause. "Is there any chance at all, that we could try again? Start over? I've changed, Quinn. I really have." "No," I said, my voice firm and clear. "There's no chance, Graham. But what we had wasn't real. It was me making your life comfortable while you took me for granted. It was me building something while you were planning your exit. I'm not that person anymore. I've changed. Maybe you have. But it doesn't matter. I'm happy now. Actually happy. I have a career I love, a home that's mine, a life I built for myself. You taught me something valuable, Graham. I don't need you. I never did." I heard him exhale shakily on the other end. "I really messed up," he said quietly. "Yes, you did. Goodbye, Graham." I hung up and immediately blocked the new number. And I felt nothing. No anger. No sadness. No lingering attachment or what. Just complete, total indifference. He was part of my past now. A chapter that had closed. And I was fine with that. I set my phone down on the coffee table and stared at the blocked number confirmation on the screen. Graham was gone. Not just from this conversation but from my life completely. No more calls. No more texts. No more chances for him to try to pull me back into his orbit. I walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows of my loft and looked out at the city. It was late afternoon, the sun starting to dip toward the horizon, painting the buildings in shades of gold and amber. 2 years had passed since the party that ended my marriage. 2 years since I stood in that ballroom and watched my husband give my seat to another woman. 2 years since I'd walked out with my head high and dismantled everything he'd built. And in those 2 years I'd built something entirely new. Sunday mornings became my favorite time of the week. I'd wake up slowly without an alarm in a bedroom that was entirely mine. No compromises about the duvet cover or whether the curtains should be blackout or sheer. My mother had made simple linen panels in soft gray that filtered the morning light without blocking it completely. I'd make coffee in my kitchen. A real espresso machine I'd bought myself, not the basic drip coffee maker Graham had insisted was good enough. I'd learned to pull shots that were actually decent with proper crema and everything. Then I'd sit on my gray sectional couch with a book or my laptop or sometimes just the view, watching the city wake up below me. This particular Sunday morning, 2 years and 1 month after the divorce, I sat with my coffee and a croissant from the bakery downstairs, reading an article in Forbes. Rising Stars in Corporate Fraud Prevention, the headline read. My photo was on page 3. Professional headshot, confident smile. The caption identifying me as Director of Corporate Fraud Investigation at one of the city's top forensic firms. The article talked about our division's success rate, the high-profile cases we'd closed, the innovative techniques we'd developed for tracking financial irregularities across complex corporate structures. It quoted me saying, "Fraud leaves patterns. Our job is to recognize those patterns before they become catastrophic." I set the magazine down and looked around my loft. My life looked nothing like I'd planned when I was married to Graham. I didn't have the suburban townhouse with the backyard he'd promised to turn into something nice. I didn't have the promise of children someday or the stable, comfortable future we'd talked vaguely about building together. But I had things I didn't even know I needed. Autonomy. The ability to make every decision about my life without consulting anyone or compromising or making myself smaller to accommodate someone else's preferences. Respect. From my colleagues, from my team, from the industry professionals who now sought my opinion on complex cases. Purpose. Work that felt meaningful instead of just a job I was good at. And peace. Real peace, not the fragile stability I'd mistaken for happiness during my marriage. My division had grown from 5 people to 12. We handled cases across 3 states now. I'd been promoted twice more since that initial jump to division director. My salary had tripled, then quadrupled. I'd traveled for work. Boston for a conference on financial ethics, Chicago for a major case involving healthcare fraud, Denver for a speaking engagement at a forensic accounting summit. Cities I'd never have visited in my old life, where Graham's sales conferences and motorcycle rallies dictated our travel schedule. I made new friends. Real friends, not just couples we socialized with because they were Graham's colleagues or business contacts. There was Jennifer from the book club I'd joined, a literature professor who introduced me to authors I'd never have discovered on my own. We met every Thursday evening at a wine bar downtown to discuss whatever we were reading. There was Keisha from the financial literacy nonprofit where I volunteered twice a month, teaching low-income women how to manage their money and recognize predatory lending practices. She was a social worker with a wicked sense of humor and an encyclopedic knowledge of the best restaurants in the city. My family was closer than ever. I had brunch with my parents every other Sunday at a cafe near their house. My mother had stopped stress baking and started oil painting, creating abstract pieces that now hung in my loft. My father had retired and taken up woodworking, building me a beautiful desk for my home office. Marcus and I texted almost daily. Stupid memes, article recommendations, updates about our lives. He'd met someone, a woman named Stephanie who worked in urban planning, and watching him fall in love reminded me that good relationships existed. Partnerships built on respect and honesty instead of deception and gradual erasure. You seem lighter, my mother had told me at brunch last week. Happier. More like yourself than you've been in years. He was right. I started dating again 18 months after the divorce was finalized. The first few attempts were disasters. Awkward coffee dates with men who talked about themselves for 45 minutes straight. Dinner with a lawyer who spent the entire meal checking his phone. Drinks with a software engineer who asked if I was really a director or if that was just a courtesy title. I almost gave up. Then I met David Park at a conference on financial ethics in Boston. I was presenting on pattern recognition in corporate fraud. He was in the audience taking notes in an actual notebook instead of on his phone or laptop. After my presentation, he approached me at the reception. "That was fascinating," he said, handing me a glass of wine I hadn't asked for but accepted anyway. "The way you traced that embezzlement scheme through the shell companies, elegant work. We talked for 3 hours. About forensic accounting, about healthcare fraud cases he'd worked on, about the intersection of ethics and investigation, about everything and nothing. When the reception ended, we exchanged numbers. Our first real date was 2 weeks later at a small Thai restaurant near my loft. David was soft-spoken, thoughtful, with dark eyes and a dry sense of humor that snuck up on you. He asked about my work. Actually asked, then actually listened to the answer. When I mentioned I was divorced, he simply nodded. Me too, he said. 3 years ago. Was difficult. But it taught me a lot about what I actually need in a partner. Honesty. Respect. Someone who doesn't need me to be different than I am. We'd been seeing each other for 6 months now. It was different from Graham. Quieter. Less intense. Built on mutual respect and genuine interest in each other's lives rather than the initial spark of attraction that burned bright and fast. David asked my opinion on things. He listened when I talked about work instead of waiting for his turn to speak. He didn't try to solve my problems or manage my decisions or suggest that maybe I was overreacting when something bothered me. We were taking it slow. Both of us carried scars from our previous marriages. Both of us were cautious about diving into something serious too quickly. But there was possibility there. Real possibility. And for the first time since Graham, I wasn't afraid to explore it. I saw Graham one last time on a Thursday evening in late November. I was leaving a work event downtown, a networking mixer for forensic professionals that had run longer than expected. It was dark, the streets lit by storefronts and streetlights, the air crisp with the promise of winter. I was walking toward the parking garage when I spotted him on the sidewalk about 20 feet ahead. Framed. Alone. Carrying a worn messenger bag, walking with his head down like he was trying to be invisible. He looked older. Graying at the temples. Lines around his eyes that hadn't been there 2 years ago. His coat looked thin for the weather, his shoes worn at the heels. He hadn't seen me yet. I could have walked past. Could have turned down a different street. Avoided the encounter entirely. Kept him as just a memory instead of a real person I had to face. But I didn't. I stopped walking and called out, "Graham." He looked up, startled. For a moment he didn't seem to recognize me. Then his eyes widened. "Quinn." "Hi." We stood there on the sidewalk while people flowed around us, commuters heading home, couples out for dinner, the normal rhythm of city life continuing regardless of our awkward reunion. "How are you?" I asked. The question was more from politeness than genuine interest, but I asked it anyway. "Okay. Working for a smaller firm now. Still in sales. It's fine. Different but fine." He glanced at me, really looked at me for the first time. Taking in my tailored coat, my confident posture, the leather portfolio bag I carried, the general air of someone who had their life together. "You look good," he said. "Really good." "Thank you. I'm doing well." Silence stretched between us. Uncomfortable. Heavy with everything we'd never said to each other, all the conversations we'd never had. "I see articles about you sometimes," Graham said quietly. "Your work. The division you're leading. You're really successful." "I work hard," I said simply. He nodded. Looked down at his worn shoes. "I think about that night sometimes. The party. What I did. How incredibly stupid I was." I looked at him carefully. This man I'd loved. This man I'd married. This man I'd spent 5 years of my life building a future with. He seemed like a stranger now. "We both made choices, Graham," I said. "Mine just turned out better." He laughed, but it was bitter and hollow. "Yeah. They did." Another pause. Longer this time. "I should go," I said. "I have plans." "Right. Of course." He hesitated. "It was good seeing you, Quinn. Take care of yourself, Graham." I walked away without looking back. He was truly, finally, completely part of my past. Late that night, I sat by my floor-to-ceiling windows with a glass of red wine, looking out at the city lights spread below me like stars that had fallen to earth. I thought about that moment in the Grand Meridian Ballroom. Graham leaning close, whispering those 5 words, "Not here. Sit with the guests." Vanessa sliding into my seat with that smirk. The laughter from his family. The whispers spreading through 200 guests. The humiliation washing over me in waves. At the time, it had felt like the worst moment of my life. Public proof that I'd been erased, diminished, discarded. That I didn't matter to the man I'd built my life around. But looking back now, 2 years and thousands of choices later, I saw it differently. That moment was my liberation. Graham had meant it as a dismissal. A demotion. Evidence that I didn't matter anymore, that Vanessa was the upgrade and I was the outdated model being phased out. But what he'd actually done was show me exactly who he was. And more importantly, who I'd become by staying with him. Someone small. Someone who made herself invisible to keep the peace. Someone who compromised and accommodated and quietly accepted being treated as less than she deserved. The ceremony had shut down that night. The party had ended in chaos and humiliation. For Graham, for Vanessa, for everyone who'd participated in my public erasure. But I'd walked out standing tall. With evidence in hand and a plan already in motion. And in the 2 years since, I'd built a life I never knew I wanted. A life where I didn't make myself small for anyone. Where I made my own choices without compromise. Where I was respected and valued and recognized for my actual abilities instead of my willingness to accommodate. I was successful. Independent. Genuinely, deeply happy. The reserved seat Graham denied me wasn't a rejection. It was a gift. It forced me to stand up, to demand better, to walk away from a life that was slowly erasing me one compromise at a time. Yes, I lost my marriage that night. But I found myself. And that trade was worth everything. I took a sip of wine and smiled at my reflection in the dark window. The woman looking back at me was someone I recognized now. Someone I was proud to be. Someone who would never ever sit in the guest section again. If this story of calculated revenge had you holding your breath, smash that like button right now. My favorite part was when Quinn exposed the $25,000 wire transfer in front of 200 witnesses. What was your favorite moment? Drop it in the comments below. Don't miss more powerful stories like this. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload.